Hi everyone, and welcome to this offset function tutorial. In this video, we are going to learn everything you need to know to be able to use the offset function in Excel. Let's dive right in. For this video, I've prepared a workbook with all the examples we are going to see. You can download it at the link in the description down below, which will include the empty and the solved tabs. We'll be working with this fictional set of monthly sales. But before we start with the examples, I would like to briefly explain how the offset function works. It will return a cell or a range that is a specific number of rows and columns away from a given reference. The first input it requires is the reference. This is the cell the function will start counting from. It can be any cell in the workbook, but usually you want it to be close to the data you are working with. Then you need to give it the number of rows you want to move up or down from the reference cell, and then the number of columns you want to move right or left from the reference cell. These three are necessary inputs. You always need to specify them. We'll see the height and the width in a bit, but for the moment, let's go back to the Excel. For the first exercise, we want to obtain the value of the 6th month and the 3rd year. So we are going to type offset and give it the reference. So for example, we can start right here in the corner. And then we want to move 6 rows down, so we'll type 6 for the row input. We also want to move 3 cells to the right, so we are going to type 3 for the column input. And as you can see, we get the value from cell H13. Now, if we were to set the reference here, the value for the rows would be 5, and for the columns would be 2, because we are 1 row and 1 column closer to the cell we want to end up at. Now, we could also start over here, and in this case, the rows would be 6, like before, but since we are already in the same column we want, the column's value would be 0. You can also leave it empty, like this. Now, before we move forward with the other examples, let's go back to the remaining inputs. These are used when you want to obtain a range instead of a single cell as a result. The height will tell Excel how many rows you want, and the width will set the number of columns. Let's put this into practice. For the next example, we want the total sales for the first 3 months of the first year. First, we set the reference like we did before. We set 1 for the columns and 1 for the rows. So we are starting here. Now we set the height as 3 because we want 3 months, and the columns as 1 because we only want 1 year. Now, as you can see, it is spilling out of the cell. That's because it's returning the whole range. What we need to do is to wrap it around another function, in this case the sum function, to get the total of the 3 months. If we wanted to know the total for the 2nd year, we just replace the column input. But that's not very dynamic. Let's see a more dynamic example. Here we'll start like before, setting the reference in the same place, and setting the rows to 1, like before. But now, instead of typing the number of the year, we'll reference it to the cell with the input. Then we set the height to 12, since we want the total of the whole year, and the width to 1 because we only want 1 year. Like this, we can easily change the year we want and get the result instantly. Then we can do the same for other functions. For example, maybe we want the average instead of the total. We can use the same logic and only change the wrapping function. We type average, then offset, start at the same place. We set 1 for the rows, and for the columns we use the input cell above. Then for the height we type 12 to get the whole year and 1 for width. And just like before, we can easily set the year we want to calculate the average for. Now, let's move to a slightly more advanced example. Here we want to calculate the total sales for each quarter of the years we have above. We start by typing sum, then offset. Now for the reference, we'll start at the same column but at the top of the table. We fix the row but not the column. Then for the rows input is where it gets interesting. We select the number of the quarter to the left and multiply it by 3. In this way, we'll be starting at the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th month. The column's input will be 0, since we are already in the column we want. We'll set the height to -3, so it grabs the 3 rows above each reference, and the width to 1, because we only want 1 year. We also need to fix the column for the quarters input. Now we can easily copy and paste across the area, and we'll get the total for each quarter of each year. And as you can see, we are getting the correct results. Great, let's move to the second section of examples. Here we'll see how to combine offset with more advanced functions and get more dynamic results. Now to the right, we have a table with the annual sales of different salespeople. For the first example, we want the total sales for 2024 of one salesperson, in this case Paul, but we want it to be dynamic. We'll start by typing offset. We'll set the reference in the corner once again. Now for the rows, we want it to find the person's name. In this case, we'll use the function match. So we type match, then the lookup value will be the input cell we have above, and the lookup array will be the list of names from the table, and we want an exact match, so we type 0. If you'd like a video on how to use the match function, let me know in the comments. Now we type 4 for the columns, since 2024 is the 4th column in our table. And that's it. Now we can easily switch between names and get the sales for that person. By the way, if you want to know how to make this drop-down lists, also let me know in the comments. Great. Now for the next example, let's make it a bit more dynamic. So we are able to switch between names, but also between years. For this, we'll use the match function twice. We'll start again by typing offset and setting the reference. Next, for the rows, we'll do the exact same as before, and for the columns, we'll use the match function again. Now for the lookup value, we'll select the input cell with the year, and the lookup array will be the rows with the years from the table, and we also want an exact match. Now we can easily switch between years and salesperson, and it updates automatically. For the next example, we'll be working with this table that show monthly sales for 1 year. In this case, we want the total sales between 2 months, in this example between the 3rd and 6th month. We start by typing sum, then offset, we select this cell as the reference, and for the row, we select the cell with the input for starting month. The columns is 0, since we are already standing in the column we want. And now for the height, we'll do the ending month minus the starting month, in this case 6 minus 3. But because we want to include both the 3rd and the 6th month, we add 1. And finally, for width, we type 1. If we select these months in the table, we see the sum is the same result we got. And now we can change the starting and ending month easily. Next, we want to be able to work with data that is being updated regularly. Maybe we have this table that is updated monthly, and maybe we are in June, and we only have the data up to that month. But we want to know certain metrics for the latest months, for example, for the last 3 months. But we don't want to be changing the formula every time we update the table. So let's see how to handle that using the offset function. First, we want the total sales, so we type sum, then offset, set the reference at the top of the table. And now, to make it dynamic, we can use the function count, or count A. And what it will do is that it will count the number of cells that have any input within the range we select. So we select the range for the whole year. The columns is 0, and the height will be minus and the number of months we want, in this case 3. So it will start at the number of the latest input it counted, and then select the 3 months prior to that. Now if we delete some of the latest data, the result updates automatically and returns the sum of the latest 3 months with data in them. We also want the average for that period, so we can just copy the formula and change sum by average. And then we want the largest monthly sales in the period. We can again copy the formula, and in this case, we can use the large function. And this function also requires the position, K. We want the first one, in other words, the largest, so we type 1. If we wanted the second largest sale, we would type 2, and so on. Finally, we want the lowest sale of the period, so for that, we'll use the function small. That works similarly to large, but it will return the lower or smaller number in the list. Again, if we delete some of the data, the results update automatically, and you don't need to modify the formulas each time you update the table. You can also change the number of months you want to analyze. Maybe you want the last 6 or 8 months, for example. You can just play around. So let's undo that and move forward to the last part of this video. In this section, we'll put into practice what we've learned, and we'll create charts with dynamic ranges. In the first example, we want to create a graph of annual sales for one of the salespeople, in this case, Emily. We start by typing offset, and we'll be working this table again, so we set the reference at the corner. And now we'll use the function match again, which we already know how to use, so I'll move a bit faster for this one. But we'll find the person's name in the table. And for width, we'll use 5. Because we want the data for the 5 years, we could also count the number of years at the left. But let's make it simple and just type 5. Now the data is spilling to the right, but we want it to spill downwards, so we use the function transpose. And what it does is that it converts rows into columns and columns into rows. And there you have it. Now the graph shows the data, and we can easily switch between salesperson and the graph will update automatically. And for the last one, we want the breakdown of the sales by salesperson for a specific year. So we start again by typing offset. And like before, we'll be working with this table, so we set the reference at the corner. Again, you can set the reference wherever you prefer, but I think the corner is an intuitive starting point. And now we use match for the column's input, and we want to find the year in the table. So we select the year input above, and the years range from the table. And the height will be 5 because we have 5 salespeople. Again, you could count, but let's just type 5. And there it is. We now have a pie chart showing the data by salesperson. And you can switch between years, and the chart will update. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe if you want to keep watching this type of content.